Hey beautiful people, welcome back to Angelic Embrace, where we document and narrate the glorious and life-changing near-death experiences sent in by you guys. It is greatly appreciated. So sit back, relax, know that you are loved, and let's get into today's near-death experience story. Consider subscribing and watching to the end to find out what happens. In September of 2015, on a night that was cloudy and rainy, a young guy called John was on his way home from a late shift at work. He was caught in the storm. Suddenly, as he drove through the mountainous terrain on the curving roads, he lost control of his vehicle, and it careened off the road and into a ditch. During the collision, John was knocked unconscious, and while he lay immobile in the debris, he had a vivid dream that he was flying into the skies, surrounded by a warm and soothing light. He was overcome with a sensation of bliss and tranquility that he had never felt before, and he had the distinct impression that he was in the company of a divine being. As he turned his head, he saw a person that was bathed in a brilliant and dazzling light, and he had no doubt in his mind that it was Jesus. Jesus communicated with John, assuring him of his love and forgiveness, as well as the fact that everything was going to turn out all right. As John listened to the lulling voice of Jesus, he was overcome with amazement and surprise at what he was hearing. He got the impression that he had been whisked away to a different universe, and he was well aware that this was an occasion that he would never, ever forget. During the time that Jesus was speaking, John had visions of his life flashing before his eyes. He was aware of the errors he had committed as well as the anguish and distress that he had brought forth. However, he was also aware of the love and forgiveness that had been extended to him, and he was conscious of the fact that he possessed a second opportunity. Jesus informed John that it was not yet his time to leave this world and that he still had a great deal of work to do while he was here. He explained to John that he had a unique role to play and that he was an essential component of something that was far bigger than himself. John awoke at the conclusion of the dream in a hospital room surrounded by his loved ones. The dream had come to an end. He understood that Jesus' appearance to him had been a message that everything was going to turn out all right, and he was certain that he would always regard the event as a gift from on high. As John made progress in his recovery from his injuries, he had a revitalized sense of purpose and increased resolve. He was well aware that he had been provided with a do-over, and he was resolved to make the most of this opportunity. He swore that he would devote his entire life to Jesus and would follow the teachings of Jesus with all of his heart. As a result, John set out on a path of faith and self-discovery, pursuing his ambitions and making the most of every moment of his life with the assistance of Jesus and the encouragement of the people he cared about the most. He was well aware of the many favors that had been bestowed upon him, and he expressed his appreciation for each and every one of his waking hours. Let us now go to our second near-death experience account of the day. On the 3rd of January 2018, there was a storm and it was raining outdoors. The plan called for me to go duck hunting with a friend's niece and the niece's father. Even though I was on vacation, I wasn't in the best of health. Because the weather was unfavorable for hunting, we decided to cancel our trip. While my wife was at work, I decided to start making some repairs around the house because I felt well enough to do so. After installing and verifying the functionality of a thermostat, I noticed that a floor transition strip had become unattached. After nailing it down, I stepped up and looked at it. I scratched my arm, and then it seemed like there was a vibrating pager in the center of my chest. I immediately changed the station on the television. When anything like that happens, I always end up feeling weak and exhausted. Several years ago, I was concerned that my body was about to shut down, and I informed my physicians about the butterfly feeling that I had been experiencing. It wasn't in my stomach that I felt the vibrations, they were in the center of my chest. Following a series of tests, the doctor determined that I had an irregular heartbeat and prescribed me some medicine to treat the condition. I decided to stop taking the drug altogether. A little over 2 years later, while I was at the hospital for a stress test, I didn't want the exam to end. Instead of taking the prescription, I decided to increase the amount that I exercise. I finished cleaning up after my heart started to vibrate, and then I took my blood pressure, which was 156/106 at a rate of 75 beats per minute. This is the highest that it has ever reached in the past. Despite that, I had no complaints. I thought maybe a steamy shower would do the trick, so I gave that a shot. The first attack came on, and I knew right away that I was having a heart attack even before it started. The seizure felt like a truck was sitting on my chest while a bowling ball weighing 16 pounds was trying to push its way up my throat. I have suffered from the pain of tearing ligaments and breaking bones, but nothing can compare to the agony of my body fighting to stay alive. As someone who has received training in CPR and first aid, I went into the slower than normal mode. After I was done rinsing off, I immediately dialed both 911 and my wife's number. After that, I experienced yet another seizure. Following the fourth attack, I was compelled to take a seat in the reclining chair. The initial responders began to arrive on the scene. First, the firefighters arrived, and then the paramedics took over from there. They interrogated me with questions. When the physician assistant looked up, he said, "Give to him what we have. We are in danger of losing him." My wife arrived in a state of panic as they were loading me into the ambulance. The paramedics were instructing the fire captain to remove her from the line of traffic and detain her in order to keep her safe. While we were on our way to the hospital, the paramedic asked me if the firefighters had explained what was going on to me. I said, "No." He muttered, "Great, always leave it up to us to deliver bad news," as he left the room. I looked into his eyes and said, "I am aware that I am having a heart attack and will soon pass away. You shouldn't be concerned about it. You take care of your responsibilities, and I'll do my part by doing everything I can to stay alive." I began having another seizure shortly after. I caught a few words out of his mouth as he discussed the convulsion. The strap around my right arm from the blood pressure machine was then tightened, which brought an end to the seizure. I made an effort to get his attention in order to continue applying pressure to my right arm in the hopes that I would survive. In the beginning, he got it wrong and said that depression was very common. I was furious with him and yelled, "I'm not depressed. Put a stop to my right arm." He claimed that he was unable to carry out the task because the machine operated on its own. When the pressure finally eased off, I was just about to tell him to put on the tourniquet. I yelled out, "Oh no, it's too late." I started having a different kind of seizure and began shaking uncontrollably as it progressed. It was chilly for me. I was able to make out the words "We're losing him" being yelled by the medic at the drivers. They responded by shouting, "Hang on. We'll be on the ramp in fewer than 2 minutes." I lost all consciousness. I do remember waking up as they were assisting me in getting out of the ambulance. We were able to make it to pre-opus. My eyes started to roll back in my head, the lights went out, and the last thing that went through my head was, "Thank God, it's over." After that, I became conscious of being in complete darkness, with nothing at all. After that, I experienced an overwhelming sense of happiness, joy, and love. There are no words that can adequately convey what it was that I was experiencing. I had the impression that I was walking through a mist even as I watched a light that grew brighter and brighter as the emotions became increasingly powerful. Because of how intense the light was, it made the people appear to be silhouettes. They were rushing all around the body of the person who was lying down next to me while they were doing so horizontally. Both the light and the way it made me feel drew me in. I overheard someone say, 200 joules. Prepared. Ready. I give it my best effort to scream no, as loud as I possibly can. The body suddenly lurches upward, and as soon as it comes to a stop on the table, I am back in my own body. The moment I woke up, my very first thought was, "Wow, that was the most restful sleep I've ever had." I had an unbelievable feeling. After that, I had an idea. That was such a strange dream. Once more, the male nurse began performing CPR. Then I recalled that I had been admitted to the hospital because I was experiencing a heart attack. I hadn't opened my eyes yet, so I didn't have the strength to stop him or say anything to him. I was speechless. He is relentlessly beating on me. I could just make out the female doctor pulling the incubator tube out of the cabinet. I panicked and thought, "Oh no, they're going to slit my throat." I am aware that there is someone standing to my right. I'm now looking at him and blinking my eyes like crazy. When he finally looks down, he notices that I'm blinking, and he exclaims, "Stop." I think he's back. They continued to yell at me despite the fact that nobody was listening. The nurse pulls the oxygen mask off the patient's face at long last. I say, "Yeah, I'm back. Off with your head." I mustered the strength to raise my right hand, shake the hands of the nurses who were helping to push me into the operating room, and apologize for being such a bother to them for what they had done. This was all I could do while they were helping me. She said something sarcastic, and then the doctor cautioned me against acting in a similar manner in the future. I told her that I wouldn't do it as long as they guaranteed they wouldn't hit me with another 200 joules. They both stopped pushing the gurney at the same time and asked each other, "How did I know that?" After giving it some thought for a moment, I chuckled and asked, "I guess I died on you, didn't I? You only need to shock us to get us to come back." While I was in the operating room, the nurses began getting me ready for the sedation. As the attending physician was describing the process, I interrupted him to let him know that I was already familiar with it. He says, "Okay, you do know. You are not allowed to move while we are carrying out this procedure." I tell him, "Better hurry. I am about to have another seizure and I am unable to move anyway." They discovered one artery that had been blocked. The following day, I shared my story with my close friends and family members. One of them inquires as to whether or not I returned with anything else. The first thing that comes to my mind is to laugh and tell her, "You've seen way too many horror movies." I took a moment to reflect on the matter. I took a look in all directions before responding, "Yes, I did, but you're not going to like it." There was no one who pressed, and I did not say anything else. After everything settled down, my best friend and a few other people were curious about what had happened. I warned them that there was something on the horizon. There will be a loss of life in the thousands, possibly even in the millions. There is going to be a significant amount of effort made to save everyone, and we should not participate in it. They inquired, "Is there a war going on?" It wasn't like I had a conversation, but no, it wasn't a war, I said in response. Something about attempting to save everyone but ultimately failing to do so. Another fallacy is the notion that when one is on their deathbed, they can simply ask for forgiveness at will, and it will be granted. No, you're going to pay. You have a responsibility to make amends prior to that time. The pressure that some people are putting on others in an attempt to force them to believe makes me unhappy. There is a purpose behind the gift of free will that we are given. He wants every person to take an honest look at themselves and discover it within themselves. Believe it with every fiber of your being. If you act morally, you won't have any problems. Start making amends. Since I've been back, I've been forced to face the consequences of actions that I took when I was a child but had long since forgotten. I recalled even insignificant incidents in which I had merely made a remark with the intention of eliciting laughter, but it turned out that it had caused someone significant emotional distress. Since I've had my heart attack, I've been making up for lost time. When others inquire as to whether or not I have faith, my standard response is always yes. They look at me, and I simply tell them that I cannot instruct them in what they should do. It is up to you to discover it within yourself. I believe the only reason I am here now is to relate my experience and serve in some capacity as a messenger.